I started receiving texts and calls about the massacre. I was up for the next 36 hours, responding to the tragedy and then flying the next morning at about 6 a.m. Over to Oak Creek to help with the response. The faith community shared in our grief, shared in our pain, reached out in ways we couldn't have imagined in terms of helping us. I personally attended an interfaith and just community vigil the Monday after the attack, where you literally had at least 1,000 non-Sikhs, many of them just covered their head out of respect to the Sikh community. What happened in Oak Creek brought out what we're really good at and what we're not so good at. What we're really good at as a society is responding to tragedy right away. What we're not so good at, and it really shows up with the Sikh community, is taking care of the root causes. While the neo-Nazi triggerman acted alone, I would say that the larger causes of the violence still reverberate today, and that's an uncomfortable truth that many folks have not been able to or willing to grapple with. The archetype of the Arab, Muslim, South Asian, brown, bearded terrorist, that contributes to what happened in Oak Creek. Most terrorist incidents in this country in the last 12 years since 9/11 have been conducted by domestic violent extremists and non-Muslim domestic violent extremists. And yet the allocation of resources for so-called Muslim terrorism and the like is much greater than what it is for these domestic violent extremists. That dynamic from our government hasn't changed. I think it's important for people to understand our community in all places in our society. So the United States military, Sikhs are irrationally excluded from service in our military, even though we have a long and storied service in the militaries of countries all over the world. It sends a wrong message when government can irrationally exclude a whole people from a critical institution. It just sends the wrong message to the rest of society. I think the impact of August 5th, 2012, the massacre in Oak Creek for the Sikh community was a combination of reminding us of how much we have been otherized in this society, to the point where death is possible. I think it also, in terms of impact, was a reminder for us as a community that when tragedy strikes, there are people in this country, in fact, the majority, are willing to help, reach out in fellowship and oneness, with our community. The last words of our daily supplication to God calls on us to pray for the chardi kala, or the buoyant optimism of all humanity. And so what you saw in the response to Oak Creek when it happened was we were praying not only for the people who lost lives, we were praying for Wade Michael Page, the person who committed the attack, and for society to have a sense of humanity and buoyant optimism.